Welcome to the Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zarrell. With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick. Visit us at ihatecritics.com, everyone's a critic podcast.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle is CriticsPod. Subscribe to the show there, like us, friend us. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, Alexa, all your podcatchers. Subscribe to the show there as well. Rate and review the show. And if you're on YouTube, click on the little bell to get a notification to let you know when a new episode arrives. And then we got Patreon, patreon.com/criticspod, the best way to help support the podcast. I know we've kind of gotten away from what we normally do with Patreon. We're trying to get through this pandemic thing, and then we'll kind of get back to, we'll reevaluate where we're at with it and come up with some new prizes and whatever. But that is the best way to help support us. But if you also want to get some podcast merch, you can head over to ihatecritics.com and click on the TeePublic podcast merch tab up in the right-hand corner. Get yourself a mask, a shirt, a pillow, a magnet, whatever you want, a tote bag. We got it all. But let's get right to our show then. Shirley.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's just jump right in here. Shirley is stars Elizabeth Moss as the legendary writer Shirley Jackson, who is, if you don't know, she was responsible for The Haunting. The Haunting of Hill House is what it's called, but The Haunting movie, any movie that was based off of that is based off of her work, among numerous other sort of horror and psychological thrillers. And this is not necessarily a biopic. This is about a biopic of her themes. Essentially, in a lot of ways, this is a lot in the manner of approaching a historic figure. It's a little bit like A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, which is a biography of Mr. Rogers, but really only a biography of the idea of Mr. Rogers and the things that he stood for. The same thing here is that this is kind of a biopic of Shirley Jackson, but of the themes of Shirley Jackson's work and not necessarily her actual life. It's set in 1965 near the end of her life when she passed away relatively young. It doesn't acknowledge that she had 4 kids at the time by then, and one of them was still living at home. Like all this stuff that left out. But again, it's not about that. It's about using her as the frame to provide a biography of the ideas that she was fascinated with. And these are ideas of identity, sexuality, psychodrama, all these types of psychological themes that were huge in her work. The idea is that she and her husband, played by Michael Stuhlbarg, are welcoming this young couple, played by Odessa Young and Logan Lerman, to stay at their house. Logan Lerman's going to be a student teacher to Stuhlbarg, and they've kind of roped Odessa Young into being their maid, essentially, even though she had kind of academic aspirations of her own that she now has to put aside to support her husband. That's where it goes from there, is just a series of building tension throughout of these 4 characters. And I don't know if you know anybody like this, Bob, but have you ever met anybody who, like, when they're in a room and they're upset about something, like the room changes? Like, people can be upset, but like this kind of person, the room almost feels colder when they're in it.
Are you saying like in general, or just when they're in a mood? When they're
mostly when they're in a mood, but in general, yeah, I can say in general, just they change the tone of a room they're in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I suppose probably in a different way than this, but I think, certain people have control over them, whether it's positive or negative, but they do kind of, I get what you're saying. They have their presence that just does something to a room.
Yeah, Shirley, Elizabeth Moss as Shirley Jackson has that. She has this stare that looks like it could just murder someone. And Elizabeth Moss plays this incredibly well. I mean, she's magnificent in this movie. The movie opens on this scene at a party, and she is not somebody who likes parties. She doesn't like leaving her house at this point of her life. She's become desperately agoraphobic. She's got writer's block. She's very angry about all of this. She's upset with her husband, who's and his numerous infidelities, and she's just not having any of this. And there's this entire party that's happening on this house that's on a college campus people everywhere except for the one room where she is, just sitting there smoking a cigarette and drinking, because nobody's going to that room with her in there, because she might just eat them alive. And it's just, it sets up this character so perfectly. From there, the next morning, she finds out then that her husband is allowing these people to stay in their home, and she completely eviscerates Odessa Young's character. And from there, then Odessa Young's character is going to redeem herself, and she does soften, and Shirley does, and becomes kind of welcoming of this person, and they develop a relationship that has numerous different aspects, even a kind of a sexual quality to it. But overall, the way I would describe it is kind of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf crossed with an Ari Aster movie, and it takes those two things and brings them together so perfectly. It really is just exceptional in so many different ways. I really, really love this movie.
I did not get a chance to see it, largely due to, I think it came out on Friday, and the day that we sat down to watch movies was Thursday. But it does look or it sounds fascinating. I'll be honest, the pictures, when I just see like a still, I'm almost like, these look like a modern day hipster version or whatever this is. But I think that's misleading. I think it sounds like I'm taking that out of context and just adding that onto this movie that doesn't exist. But it does sound fascinating. And do they go into her works at all, or is it just more about the themes?
Mostly the themes, yeah. There is what part of the story is set around her book Hangs a Man, which is about a real life story about a Bennington college student who went missing. And Shirley Jackson was working at Bennington College at the time the girl went missing, and developed this story, just kind of her fascination with this missing woman. And they take that story and they move it to 1965, and they set it up to where it can be confusing at times when you're not really paying attention, but she essentially crosses this missing girl with Odessa Young's character, and it becomes this idea of her pursuing what's missing in Odessa Young's character. And the same goes for Odessa Young. She's kind of pursuing what's missing in her, and they're both projecting that onto this missing girl. And like I said, just so many unique and fascinating themes in that, just about being a woman or being missing, or the violence against women. It's really amazing.
I mean, Elizabeth Moss, on top of that, I mean, from the beginning of this podcast, we've kind of got to watch her go from like this indie darling to gradually get more and more popular. And I'd say she's damn near a straight-up A-lister at this point with, The Handmaid's Tale, The Invisible Man was huge. She's leading she shines in just about everything she does. It's kind of exciting to see, really.
It is. I mean, like, even something as bad as The Kitchen, if they just focused on just her and got rid of Tiffany Haddish and Melissa McCarthy's plot, she was actually doing something interesting at the very least.
But I mean, at worst, that just got forgotten. I don't think it's gonna hurt her. But no, I mean, you can tell. I mean, she just owns the screen. I mean, there's a few actresses right now. I mean, I guess a few actors, period. But that do that, and they're just gonna. Everything they're in, whether it's Us or how big or small the role is, she really does. I don't know. She takes full ownership of it and just goes all out, and you never really see her phoning it in. I haven't seen The Kitchen, but like you
she's
said,
not phoning it in. She's doing something entirely that's an entirely different movie all of its own.
So you got to follow her lead, is really what you're saying.
If only we could.
But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing this. I just wish the timing would have worked out better for this episode. It
should be noted that I don't know. I think the movie's getting relatively good reviews, but I've seen a lot of negative reviews out there, so I might be just alone in loving it as much as I do. But
do you know what the criticism is?
Fantastic.
Do you know what the criticism is?
I've not really read many other critics on it, honestly, but I think again, it's one of those things where people are looking for a more traditional biopic and they're not finding it. And also, the movie can be a little bit confusing at times in what they're doing with the missing girl, and having Odessa Young occasionally become her can kind of throw a few people. Not to say that many critics were thrown by that, but it could be annoying for some.
I mean, I will say we were somewhat alone in Rocket Man, but then like Bohemian Rhapsody gets treated like it's the greatest thing ever made. Which, don't get me wrong, I liked it, but Rocket Man was more about not being accurate and more of, I don't know if themes is the right word, but it definitely uses his music to describe his life from his version, which was cool. But yeah, sometimes you're just alone.
I love that. I do love that. I'm looking at the Rotten Tomatoes score on Shirley right now, and it's at 90%, so that's good. At least most people liked it then.
Good, you're not alone.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anything else on Shirley, or do you want to move on?
I just think everybody needs to see this and really just watch whatever Elizabeth Moss does. She's just so very, very good.
All right.
I think it may be available on Hulu later this month. So,
oh, nice.
For those who want to catch up on it,
I will definitely be one of those. Be Water.
Yes, Be Water is the new documentary on Bruce Lee, and this is an ESPN 30 for 30 documentary. ESPN's been really killing it lately, obviously, with The Last Dance getting so many positive takes and positive reviews, and I think this one is just another solid effort. This is really good. Basically, this is telling his story about his frustration in trying to take what he does and go to Hollywood, and it must have been they capture the frustration that he must have had, even as he's a guy who is relatively zen about just about everything. The frustration of trying to be successful in Hollywood must have gotten to him, because you watch this movie and you see him being like incredible from the first moment. The movie opens with this incredibly well preserved video of him. What do you call it? Auditioning for roles. They're creating an audition reel for him that would go on to get him the Green Hornet, and you can just see this guy has charisma for days. That he's so fast the camera can't catch it. Like, that's how quick he is. But then he's also, when he stops down, he's just, he's so loose and free and charismatic and charming. And you're thinking, this is 1964. This is well before he becomes a worldwide superstar. And you can already see what a massive superstar he should be at that point. And of course, he goes on to Green Hornet and gets this terrible role where they don't give him any lines. They won't let him talk. They won't bill him. They certainly pay him far less than the lead actor. By the way, can you even name the guy who was the lead actor in the Green Hornet? I can't.
I cannot.
It
I
goes to show
it right now, but that's all I could do.
It just goes to show, though, that this is this is why. Just one of those emblematic of the day, just the systematic racism of Hollywood at that time. They had money on the table in this guy and repeatedly deny it. They just repeatedly refuse to pick it up. And it's just this absolute demonstration of the worst of the ugliest of racism. And they go into that very in a strong detail, showing the number of different horrific things that Hollywood did to Asian people in that time period, even just before he started, all the way back to the early days of Hollywood. Just this ugly, disgusting racism. Of course, Breakfast at Tiffany's right in there.
Did they show it?
Oh, they did.
Oh, nice.
And they did, and they had his wife even talking about the whole thing is narrated by his wife and his daughter, and I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, some people who really knew him very well. And his wife was actually with him when they went to see Breakfast at Tiffany's, thinking, "Oh, this is the movie everybody's talking about. This will be fun." And then Mickey Rooney comes on screen, and Bruce Lee is just horrified, and they walk out, because it's one of the ugliest moments in Hollywood history, and we need to disown and delete this movie as much as we possibly can. It's just so terrible, but and he hated it. He hated that movie deeply, and as well as he should. They show repeatedly just these horrific scenes of white people in with slant eyes and doing horrible accents, and it's just disgusting. And this is what he was up against. This is what he was fighting against. The whole time he was trying to, and meanwhile, he's so much more talented and interesting than anything that they're putting out there. It's so frustrating to watch. But then here, the movie is also about his philosophy, about overcoming things, and about finding ways to overcome, obstacles. And that's what the philosophy of Be Water was all about for him, because there's this interview that they repeatedly cut to of him talking to an interviewer and talking about his philosophy of martial arts and what Jeet Kune Do meant to him. And it was essentially be water. Water can be anything. Water becomes whatever it is inside. If you put water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Water will eventually flow over anything that gets in its way and wear it down eventually. And that's essentially what he was getting at. And eventually he did. He did wear down the system by going around it, by going over it, by flowing around it to Hong Kong, where he makes these incredible movies that in this day and age would be the biggest movies in the world. They talk about the adjusted gross on these movies, or we're talking about a series of movies that would have made over $500 million worldwide. He would be the biggest solo star in the world, and Hollywood just refused to give him the chance.
Do they? I mean, I know because it just came out, they probably didn't. But do they address the Quentin Tarantino Brad Pitt thing, where Brad Pitt's character kicks his ass? I know that was a lot. There was a lot of controversy with that.
Yeah. No, that doesn't come up.
Yeah, I figured it was probably too new to make it in there. They're probably already working on it, or probably done with it when that movie came out, I bet. Or they're still editing it or something. I mean, I don't even know if I want to do this. Just a little racism story in terms of Asian. And when I was a kid, if I smile, like my eyes, they slant. And so I remember in third grade, a girl she would call me Chinese eyes. And you'll be hard pressed to find a picture of me on social media smiling, largely because of that one moment. And it's not, obviously I'm a white person with privilege, and I wasn't upset about being called Chinese. I was just more about they thought my eyes looked stupid. So now it's something that's haunted me forever, and I can't, even when people try to get me to smile or take pictures and do stuff on it, that one incident just has really affected me the rest of them. And I know better now, but still, and that's just from, like I said, I'm a white person with privilege. I can't imagine, that's your every day, all the time. You see it on screen, you see it just talked about casually. It's just, I don't know, it breaks my heart really, especially with what we're going through with other forms of racism right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally get what you're saying there.
Anything else on Be Water?
It debuts on ESPN tonight, actually, as we're recording on June 7th, and then should be streaming on their ESPN streaming services after that. And absolutely worth checking out. This is really, really great. There's a lot of historic footage as well of him. Like there's some video of him showing Steve McQueen, James Coburn, James Garner, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar karate, teaching them, and it's really cool.
I need to DVR that and watch it next time I get on the treadmill. So I do it The Last Dance.
Next week, I'll have another ESPN documentary called Long Gone Summer, which is about the summer of Maguire and Sosa.
Oh, that'll be interesting. Summer that brought baseball back, but also set it back forever. All right, then. Let's see. We're only at 20 minutes. All right, I watched this movie, Wendy, last night. I didn't tell Sean about it because I didn't know I was going to watch it. My wife just said, hey, let's all watch a family movie. And her and the kids decided to watch this Wendy, which is kind of a reimagining of Peter Pan. And I guess the best way I can describe it is that if Peter Pan could be real, as close to real as possible, that's what this is. Now, obviously, there's fantasy elements of it. There is the is it Neverland or Neverland? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't know.
And the lack of aging and there's a little Field of Dreams thing in it where I think if you cross this thing, you will age or something. I don't know. There's things that make you age in Neverland, Neverland.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. It's neat at first where you're just kind of like, I mean, they never call him Peter Pan. They never call him Captain Hook. They could never, it's all, it's very subtle. It's kind of, in a lot of ways, it's like this, like when I saw Phantom Menace the first time, knowing the Star Wars stuff, but not really being a fan, being like, oh, that's cool. That's going to be Darth Vader someday, and it's just a kid. And then after a while, it just kind of keeps going, and you start to, I personally lost interest in this. Like in the childhood story, the person that's Captain Hook isn't the person it is in this movie, and it doesn't bother me per se, but it just kind of took me out of it a little bit. But my wife liked it. I also had a hard time staying awake because it was kind of boring. But it's, if nothing else, it's unique and neat. I don't know if I can recommend it per se, but I mean, I'm curious your opinion I'm surprised if you ever get a copy of it or something like that. See if I'm just missing something, but it's, I don't know. If nothing else, it's neat because when you're not calling him Peter Pan, it's just this kid named Peter, and they're all jumping on. That's the other thing is to get to Neverland, they're jumping on a moving train. So
yeah.
I thought right away this is going to end badly. They swear. I mean, it's the kids are saying shit and ass and all.
Yeah.
It's definitely more grown-up version of Peter Pan, but at the same time, it's not as fun, and it's more about run away from home and the mom missing them and following your dreams, even if your dreams is to be a pirate. And
it kind of sounds like a little bit like a bad version of Where the Wild Things Go.
Maybe.
It kind of sounds like that. This is the director of The Beasts of the Southern Wild who directed this, and you're on the side of most critics most of them hated this. This is 38% positive on Rotten Tomatoes right now.
Well, I mean, Peter Pan's kind of the bad guy too, because Captain Hook's barely in it. He comes at the end, and he's one of the kids. Spoiler alert. Something happens to one of the kids, and he has. I mean, this is how kind of messed up this is for a kids movie. He starts to see himself aging in his hand, so they decide Peter Pan's going to cut his hand off, and that'll stop the aging process. Well, clearly it doesn't. He turns into a grown-up and has to put a hook on his hand. But they cut off a guy's hand in this. So my kids loved it.
This is an interesting thing, though, this theme about Peter Pan becoming the villain, because over the years, Peter Pan has become sort of a villainous figure in the way we view him, in the way we view men who try to remain children. They call it a Peter Pan complex, where a man will try and remain childish as a way of remaining young or retaining their youth. So at least I think at least there maybe the movie is trying to acknowledge that sort of new modern trope.
Oh, there's definitely that, because the main thing is they want to go back home to their mom, and he's like, why don't you want to be a kid forever? So no, you're definitely right on there. I guess what bothers me more than, I mean, maybe I'm bringing it to it, but Peter Pan's an African American in this, and there's nothing wrong with that, but now he's the bad guy. Make Wendy and the boys African American, and I mean, it doesn't matter. It's not something that sticks out. It's it's done in taste. It's very, you don't feel like, oh my god, it's not the eye rolling way that this is Hollywood trying to pat itself on the back. It didn't feel like that at all. But when all of a sudden Peter Pan's a bad guy, it's just like, well, you picked an odd time to switch races here.
It is a bad optic.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's neat for a while, but then it just gets boring. And so, yeah, I'm glad that the critics agree with me.
I have one more movie to talk about, actually. It just occurred to me that I hadn't had a chance to write about this one yet. There's a movie out this week, actually this weekend. Abel Ferrara's new movie, Tommaso, is opening tonight, I think, with a nationwide premiere. It's a virtual premiere where the actors and the director are sitting down to talk about the movie and then show it. And it's actually the newest movie from Abel Ferrara, who directed Ms. 45. This is starring Willem Dafoe as a man named Tommaso who lives in Italy. he's an American transplant. He's a film director, and he's moved to Italy to make a movie. But well before, he's just way into the early part of making that movie, so that's not really part of the movie yet. But he's essentially dealing with this new relationship that he has and this new child, this very, very young child that's in his life now, and the fact that he was an alcoholic, a very serious and debilitating alcoholic for a very long time. And the movie kind of doesn't really have much of a structure to it. It's a series of scenes where Willem Dafoe is sort of just floating through life. We're just kind of watching his everyday life. And this can be boring if you're coming at it from that perspective, because there's no real, like, you're kind of, there's no plot happening. There's just him having these various experiences of going to AA meetings and talking about his past, or going to he's learning to speak Italian now that he's living in Italy, and so he'll go to his speech teacher, and the two of them will have a conversation, and then he goes to his AA meeting, and then he has an encounter at the bakery, and then he's with his girlfriend and his daughter, and then there's a homeless guy outside who's screaming, so he goes out and he has this kind of warm moment with this homeless guy, getting him to move on and stop scaring his kid. But again, there's no unifying element. You're just sort of, if you're not absorbed by Willem Dafoe's performance, there's nothing here for you. And I'm of two minds. On the one hand, I kind of appreciate the sort of loose ideas of Tommaso, and I like Willem Dafoe a lot. And I like him playing this kind of unusual, very vulnerable character who's not, he doesn't have the power of a big character here. This is a quiet movie. So a lot of it I appreciate, but I can definitely see people not enjoying this. I can definitely see people just kind of rolling their eyes and nodding off during this movie, because it does feel very long. All this stuff is going on. Do I recommend it? For the right audience, you got to have a mindset for it. If you're not in the mindset of Tommaso, you're not going to enjoy it. You're just going to be annoyed and want to shut it off.
Well, yeah, and I guess you could say that probably about everything he's ever done. I mean, honestly, when I saw Miss 45, it started off kind of, it took me a while to, it was just kind of, what am I watching? And then it just kind of clicked and it went. Same with Bad Lieutenant, really. So I kind of get it. And whether the mindset clicks for you or not, whether like you said, you have to be ready for it and want to be open to it. But that doesn't make sense to me. So he did Dangerous Game with Madonna. Jesus.
Wow. I've not seen that one.
Right around the time she did Body of Evidence. I was just thinking that movie that everybody used to like with Michael Douglas, Falling Down. It'd be cool if he did that. I wonder what the difference of the movie would be if Abel Ferrara made Falling Down. Oh, all right. I don't know why I thought that right now, but let's see.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized, undisputed classic.
48 Hours.
48 Hours stars Nick Nolte as Jack Cates and Eddie Murphy as Reggie Hammond. Cates is a racist cop, and Hammond is a criminal who's in jail. And Cates needs Hammond for 2 days, for 48 hours, the time that he's able to take a convict out of the prison, to track down a couple of guys who murdered a couple of cops. Reggie Hammond happens to know the bad guys, Gans and Billy Bear, James Remar, and I don't know the other man's name. They are. He knows them from their criminal crossing paths years earlier, and you know that they're after his money. Reggie Hammond has $500,000 stashed in his car, and Gans knows it and wants to get the money, and Reggie knows that they're going to go for the money, and so that's how they're going to catch him. This is Walter Hill directing this, and very straightforward. Not necessarily the laugh-a-minute movie that you probably thought it was going to be, and I'm sure many people thought it was going to be. It's funny, I guess, but 48 Hours isn't nearly as funny as you think it's going to be. And something about it this time, watching it this time, it just didn't click with me as well as it has in the past. I think as a younger person, I just was so enamored of Eddie Murphy and his aura as an actor. And this time, having so much distance from it, 38 years, for fuck's sake, the aura of Eddie Murphy is dimmed enough that I'm kind of seeing this movie for what it is. And for what it is, it's tight, and the action is there, but I keep sort of applying more modern standards to it. And the kinds of shootouts that they do in this movie are just the kinds of things that would just shut down daily life for the entire country. We saw this kind of violence in one space. It's kind of hilarious when you look back on sort of this 80s style violence now and realize that if it happened today, the entire country would pause and ponder about about the type of violence that's taking place.
Especially since the cops never miss and the bad guys always miss.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's kind of a pointlessness to this that I guess I've lost my taste for. I know in the past that we've all kind of had a taste for this sort of mindless, pointless action stuff, but I've sort of lost my taste for it. And as much as I still love the Fast and the Furious movies because they're just stupid, they're just ridiculous, they're completely over the top nonsense. They know how dumb they are and they try and go as dumb as possible. Mission Impossible, is just a stunt fest that has a much slight more intricacy, I guess, than anything else. But I've lost my taste for this type of action movie that just I don't care if he gets his money or if Cates shoots the bad guy. And really, that's what we're aiming. And then really, that's again the style of the type of cop that we used to like on screen. This type of police style where this is kind of in the vein of what Eastwood was doing with the incredibly out of date Dirty Harry movies now, where it becomes revenge becomes justice. Murder. He was he was never going to arrest Gans and Billy Bear. He was going to kill him, and and I think I like many people have lost my taste for that idea.
Yeah, I mean, the movies that I haven't lost my taste from this era, it's more about the chemistry and the comedy of the actors. Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, blah blah blah. The same shit happens, but because you're not really watching that shit, you're watching the comedy of the movies, the dialogue, the interaction, the chemistry. Not to say that Nolte and Eddie Murphy don't have chemistry. It's just this is way more straightforward than those movies are. I mean, even Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, I know how silly they are. This is a Walter Hill movie that really the Walter Hill is what stands out more than anything else of this movie. And that's kind of what you almost, I'll say this about 1930s movies sometimes. You have to take yourself back to that time to really appreciate stuff. Not all the time, not with Bride of Frankenstein or whatever, but certain movies you really have to set your mindset to that time and think of how scary something like this would be or how good or impressive this would be. You really have to go back to when this came out. It's Eddie Murphy's first movie. This is the movie that made him an action star more so than a comedy star, which allowed Beverly Hills Cop. And that's kind of the only way to really appreciate this. It doesn't hold up it's not Beverly Hills Cop at all. It's a straight ahead action movie with very little comedy. And I mean, Nick Nolte, he's not cool enough to make it fun. I don't know.
Absolutely.
It really comes down to him. I mean, the aura of Eddie Murphy is coming back, at least if you let it. I know certain people are refusing to allow that, or not refusing to allow it, but are fighting it. But I love the thing he does in Saturday Night Live. I love Dolomite. I'm just kind of taking a blind eye and letting the nostalgia take over, and I want it to happen, whether it happens or not. I'm going to make it happen in my mind, so I'm cool with it. So the aura is still there, but
I think Beverly Hills Cop still works for me. The last time I watched Beverly Hills Cop, I really enjoyed it. not so much the sequels, but definitely the first one still has its power, and it's because of his magnetism, and I think it's because it's focused on him. Whereas he's having to share the screen with Nolte here, who's this kind of a big lug. I recognize that at the time, Nolte was equal to, if not a bigger star, I guess, than Eddie Murphy at the time. But he's just not anymore. And I really don't understand Nick Nolte's appeal as a human being.
Yeah. I mean, let's just keep the two of them together, because obviously 30 years ago another 48 Hours came out. But it is funny. In the first one, Nolte's the bigger star, because Eddie Murphy's just a kid on Saturday Night Live. This turns him into a star. But in the second one, Eddie Murphy's the star, Nick Nolte's not.
Yeah, Paramount didn't want Eddie Murphy in the first one. They wanted Richard Pryor. And they couldn't get Richard Pryor, and Walter Hill insisted on getting Eddie Murphy and had to work to get him, to the point where, and even after they hired him, they were close to firing him until they brought in an acting coach to actually work with Eddie and get him to concentrate and actually learn how to bounce off of a guy like Nick Nolte. And then, what you're talking about with another 48 Hours, Eddie Murphy is way bigger, and Nick Nolte is almost desperately hanging on by his fingernails.
Yeah, and I mean, you can tell Eddie Murphy's kind of driving the second one. It's his production company. It's not any better per se. Maybe, I don't know. Walter Hill's still the director, but it's just really a rehash of the first one. If I'm not. I mean,
desperately so. I mean, here we have somehow, even though Reggie Hammond was supposed to get out of prison 6 months after the first story, he's still in prison when we get to this story, because that's where they need him to be.
Right.
So they can reenact the partners friends bit. So they can reenact him singing Roxanne. So they can get him to wear the same suit that he wore in the first movie. Like that, all these contrivances that they had to do just to evoke the first movie. It's so pathetic. And then the bar scene, they got another bar scene in another 48 Hours, because hey, they went to a bar in the first movie.
Right. And you can tell they're trying to be funnier, but it's not. I mean, I think that's what they're trying to do by redoing all that, is make it goofy like Lethal Weapon and Die Hard and Beverly Hills Cop and all that. But it just doesn't translate to me. I don't know. You can tell Eddie Murphy's a star, and that almost doesn't work either. You need him to be. I don't know. It just doesn't work.
It's just not very good, because it's like they've grabbed the script for the first film and just changed out a couple of things, and here's the new movie. And that's so ridiculously dumb. I mean, to the point where even the bad guy is Gans's brother. Like, they couldn't even bother to change the name of the bad guy from the first movie. Then they pretend like that matters. It's like tangential entirely, but they make it seem like it matters in some way.
Well, let's not. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, you were saying.
I was gonna say, in both movies, if you look around in the background of the police station, they're all the cast of Lethal Weapon. Like, they're the same backup cops in Lethal Weapon, and then even the bad guy in the second one, the bad cop, is the bad guy in Lethal Weapon 1. They're all the same, and that hurts this movie, because Lethal Weapon is so far superior to this, and that you're making these characters in this movie have more talking lines than they were just backup characters in Lethal Weapon, and they were still backup characters here, but they had more lines, and I don't know. It just was. I don't know. It almost looked like it wanted to be in the same world, but it doesn't. It really comes down to, more than anything else, Walter Hill. His style just, I like some things he does to an extent, but I also have to like it for what it is, and not, like, it's not good. It's just kind of like, I'm almost bringing something to the kind of the way he does it. But for the most part, some of the stuff, it's just rough, and I don't know. It just doesn't work for me.
Deeply contrived just to get to a lot of scenes of violence and broken glass. They got to have plenty of broken glass, because Lord knows movies are all about broken glass for some reason. It's more broken glass in these two movies than I think even in Die Hard. Like, in the entire Die Hard franchise, like the amount of broken glass is ridiculous. But and just in these ridiculous, gunfights that are in these movies. Jack Cates should not be a police officer. No. He just shouldn't be, based off of the number of people that he's shot and the number of times that he gets shot at. He should not be a police officer. It's just so ridiculous that this guy is still allowed to carry a gun at a certain point because he's fired more gun. I mean, if this guy had to do paperwork on the amount of gunfire that he does in his career, he would never stop doing paperwork.
And the weird thing is they try to establish him as the only legit cop. Everybody else is corrupt. I don't know. And even with at least Lethal Weapon, they established Martin Riggs as a sharpshooter who can make any shot in the world.
Yeah.
Here he just happens to nail him in the heart every time, or the leg, or wherever he wants to hit him while being fired at. I don't know. It doesn't know how dumb it is, and I think that's really where, if you can't, not that I'm saying it's okay, but when you make the violence silly, at least that lightens it a little bit, and it's less, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but it doesn't know what it is, and it's like you said, contrived, and if it knew it was contrived, it could have made fun of being contrived. I don't know. It just doesn't work.
No, and I heard a funny story about this. Brian James, who plays the bad guy in this movie, was actually talking about how his role in the movie was much bigger. He was the third lead when he was in the movie. When he took the role and when they were filming it, he was the third lead in the movie, and he still ends up being the big bad at the end. But it's like, what, this guy? Why him? Why are we supposed to care about this guy? He's not been here the entire time. We're getting all this terrible misdirection that never really misdirects well at all. And then suddenly, it's the guy who was his friend in the first movie is the actual bad guy, the Iceman. And it doesn't make any sense. None of the clues add up in any way. And the reason for that is, according to Brian James, he was the third lead in the movie right up until the last week before release. And then Total Recall came out. And Total Recall was this massive hit. It's just a huge monster box office hit. And Paramount suddenly got paranoid. This movie is nearly 120 minutes long. We're in trouble here. We've got to do something to get more runs in and to see if we can shorten the movie to get more time on screen. That way we can compete at the box office. And this is according to Brian James, they cut about 35 minutes out of the movie, 25 to 30 minutes out of the movie, that were basically all of his plot.
In a week?
In a week.
I'm glad they did.
95 minutes is much better.
Yeah, I got what they were doing. Every time he went to the police force, said, "Hey, look into this guy." The guy ended up dead. So they established what they needed to, and he's still kind of the third lead. Other than the fact that he is his friend in the first one, he plays a bad guy in every other movie. So you're not bothered by the fact. If anything, you're just kind of annoyed. It's like you said, contrived. Well, this guy's clearly a bad guy. In fact, the fact that he wasn't a bad guy in the first one is more appealing. It's less contrived. Oh, man. I tried. This just isn't... Eddie Murphy is definitely the highlight of it, but it's more him straight up action than comedian. And I don't know. That's kind of all. I don't think.
Well, Walter Hill, I think, has basically admitted that he doesn't know much about comedy and doesn't care about comedy. He's basically talked about how he wrote and directed 48 Hours, and he had the script all set to go, and then Paramount read it and wanted more comedy. So that's why there's another screenwriter that was added to this, Larry Gross, who was added to this to essentially beef up the characters and bring in more comedy. And then, of course, Walter Hill being Walter Hill, he cuts out a lot of that. If you read this, I've been reading the script for 48 Hours this morning, and a lot of a lot of Nolte's character stuff and a lot of stuff he did with the lead actress, is it Annette O'Toole? I'm not sure her name, but that lead actress, Elaine, was actually supposed to be the third lead of 48 Hours. They cut her out completely. to the point where she's just this woman who just repeatedly harangues and tells Nick Nolte to get fucked. And in the original script, that she actually had a slightly bigger role.
I mean, it sounds like he's like a poor man Scorsese is what he's trying to do here. It's just not. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at it. I mean, obviously he did The Warriors, and I know you weren't a big fan, but people loved that one. Crossroads, I know a lot of guitar players like that one, but I don't know. He's just a different. I just don't like him that much. He's contrived, I guess, is a good word, because I mean he did that Stallone movie Bullet to the Head.
Oof.
I made Josh watch The Assignment.
I don't really think of much of that I've enjoyed about Walter Hill's work. I guess if I'm being brutally honest about it, yeah, I know a lot of people venerate him. I can recall Bruce Willis talking about how incredible it was to be able to work with the Walter Hill. I think it was Last Man Standing.
Yeah,
and that movie sucks.
Red Heat. I mean, I like the imagery of the Warriors more than anything else, and I think that as a movie, I get your point, but the imagery does at least make it neat for me. So that's kind of where it begins and ends. But
I mean, you're right. The imagery has lasted, for 30, 40 years now. So
yeah,
42 years now.
And I guess Total Recall had the same thing. So I don't know. Go ahead.
It's weird to think that as a kid I thought this was really great. Not for another 48 Hours. I didn't like it even when it came out, but the original one though, because of Eddie Murphy now. Well, it's efficient. It's short, 95 minutes.
I get why it's considered good at the time. I mean, it does make sense to me. But you have to go back to that time and realize Eddie Murphy is not a star. This is kind of his breakout. There's a bunch of things that you have to take into consideration that make it, work. But at the same time, it's not. It doesn't hold up, and that's really what this is all about, to see if it holds up or not. And no, that's the answer.
No.
Don't watch it again. Just have your nostalgia for it. That's the best bet, is all I can say.
There you go.
Next week, we've got Long Gone Summer. That's the ESPN documentary you just talked about. King of Staten Island. Our classic's going to be Knocked Up. We could go 40-year-old version, but I want to watch Knocked Up again. And I feel like you and I might be... I know a lot of people like that movie, but there's a lot of people that don't like that movie, and I don't understand why. I think it's a masterpiece. And in 1990, Dick Tracy and Zach Komaker has been trying to get us to talk about this since he's come on the first time. Gremlins 2, The New Batch.
All right, fine. I guess we don't have a choice now.
I'm just going to watch the Key and Peele skit and be done. Pure genius, really.
Oh yeah, so we'll see if Zach wants to come back next week and listen to me eviscerate his movie. I just doubt. I have my doubts that this is going to be like a
Fun
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles moment here. I'm not going to have that turnaround.
It's definitely not going to be that, and I don't even know if it. Like, to me, when it really, I can see the Key and Peele sketch being halfway accurate, and because of that, it loses the fun bad approach too. Sometimes you need the director's incompetence, but you need the incompetence mixed with the passion for the fun bad to really truly work. And this is just going to be corporate bad, and nobody wants to see corporate bad. I don't know. Maybe the millennial generation,
like a lame cash in. Yeah,
right.
I've got a lot of nostalgia for Dick Tracy. I don't know why I watched that movie as a kid, and even though obviously Warren Beatty doesn't do much for me in that role, I loved the look of the movie, the colors, and Madonna. I was especially enamored of Madonna for whatever reason.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, but that movie that year was huge, and then it just like disappeared off the face of the earth. I watched it a lot for 1 year, rented it, and then I just never thought about it again until we started playing Flickchart, and it'd pop up on occasion. So I'm curious about going back to it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Nathan Raymond, the critic, one of my favorite writers, said had a column on thedissolve.com called Forgotbusters, and this was one of the first ones that he did. And it's a perfect description because it's a blockbuster that everyone's forgotten about.
And everybody's in it. I mean, the cast is redefines all
Dustin Hoffman, Warren Beatty,
Madonna. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to watch it with my kids and see what they think, how it holds up. I'm curious. All right. K-Pax or Three Musketeers?
Three Musketeers.
Yeah, for the song alone. I'm kidding. Romeo Must Die, The Muppets, 2011.
The Muppets.
Agreed. Blazing Saddles, Ratatouille.
Ratatouille.
Agreed. I feel like we get in trouble for saying that. But.
I know.
One Way Passage, 1932. You familiar with that one?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry.
It's all right. The Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford, or Man on Fire.
Jesse James.
Agreed. The Time Machine, 2002. There's Something About Mary.
There's Something About Mary. That Time Machine movie sucked.
Yeah. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Sling Blade.
Cuckoo's Nest.
I've never seen Sling Blade.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
You should see it.
Well, yeah, I know. When? I watch like 5 movies a week. I want to see it. Source Code, Rain Man.
Source Code.
I haven't seen it, but I'll let it go because Rain Man just keeps not working for me the further and further I get away from it. Serenity, Three Amigos.
Serenity.
I'll go with that as well. Sandlot or The Patriot.
Ooh, boy. I have no passion for either of those. The Patriot.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't hold the nostalgia for Sandlot like a lot of people do. Ray or The World According to Garp?
Ray.
Philadelphia, Finding Neverland.
Ooh, those are two very good movies, but Philadelphia is the better movie.
I agree on everything you said. Ooh, this will be fun for you. I Now Pronounce You Chuck or Larry. Chuck and Larry, not Chuck or Larry. That'd be a better movie, probably. National Treasure, Book of Secrets.
Oh, two shitty movies. National Treasure because Nicolas Cage.
Yeah. I rewatched Mandy, made my wife watch it, and of course she couldn't put her phone. The first half of the movie, she's on her phone, and then when it starts to get crazy, she's trying to ask me, so what's going on? I'm like, you should have been watching. I mean, now you're missing the best part because you lost all the context that goes with it. But really, it's just a bunch of cool imagery.
Still is awesome.
Oh, yeah. I wish I could have watched. Like, I still haven't replaced the TV my son threw a drumstick through, so we had to watch it on a smaller TV with, it was still daytime, so you kind of had a little glare. So it wasn't the perfect experience, but it was still, it's just, fun. The part where you just, like, my wife got into it the second half, because how can you not?
Right.
Nicolas Cage but you need that first half, which I think seeing the theater really helped, but alone in a dark basement or something like that, or with not necessarily alone, but without distractions, that first part really does it's so well made, and it really helps set up the end that's so crazy and cool. And I kind of forgot everything about it, more or less, and I don't know, it just so good.
Yeah, I love it.
The Last of the Mohicans, I Heart Huckabees.
I Heart Huckabees.
Love that movie.
Yeah, me too. Gotta have that as a classic soon.
No, definitely. And Sideways. We keep talking about that.
Yeah.
I guess I skipped over this and just went right into the podcast, but didn't you say Ari Aster is making a 4-hour comedy?
I did, yeah. I sent that to you on Twitter. Yeah, apparently that's what he's working on right now, and I'm all for it. Follow. I'm not going to question his vision for a second. Whatever he's doing, I'm in.
I'm in. I'm weird that he's saying the length without knowing. I mean, how do you know the length till you're done? That's kind of weird for me. What if it's 5 hours? What if it's 3? I'm up for either one, but it's weird to pick a time before you finish the movie. That's all. But it is Ari Aster, so whatever he wants to do is fine with me. 7, Master and Commander.
7.
Agreed. American Hustle, Bruce Almighty.
American Hustle.
Love that one too. The Machinist. Oh my God, I can't. My list. And Rear Window, the movie where Christian Bale lost a lot of weight. Rear Window. The original.
Rear Window.
Agreed. Sometimes having a lisp on a podcast isn't fun. Thelma and Louise, Hot Fuzz.
Thelma and Louise for me.
I'm with you. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, From Hell. These are
From Hell.
Obvious this week.
I know, right?
We need to have George hasn't got the vote yet. Jerry Maguire, War Games.
Jerry Maguire.
My Best Friend's Waiting, Fargo.
Fargo.
I mean, sadly, Sling Blade and Cuckoo's Nest is probably the closest to make it difficult, and that wasn't even that difficult. Thank You for Smoking, Jackass.
Thank You for Smoking.
Love that movie. Iron Man, 13 Ghosts.
Iron Man. 13 Ghosts really sucks.
Yeah. Is that the movie that has the cool opening 10 minutes and then falls apart, or am I...
It could be. I tried to wipe 13 Ghosts out of my memory very quickly. I know there are a lot of people out there, though, who are really impressed by the visuals of that movie. Like, there's a scene where, like, a cow is cut up into 12 pieces and displayed through this, like, glass display, and people are like, oh, it's so cool. Whatever.
Yeah, it doesn't... I remember not liking it. I remember I thought it started off with like something like crazy death scene right off the bat, and then after that it went all downhill.
Tony Shalhoub is in that movie. Like, Tony Shalhoub can't be in a horror movie. What are you talking about? All I see is Monk.
That's true. The Evil Dead, Chinatown.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Finally.
All right, we've got a good one here. Because I know I'm supposed to say Chinatown, and I'm not going to.
I know. That's the problem, is we're going to agree on it.
I mean, Chinatown's incredible, but I'm watching Evil Dead I watch Evil Dead right now and just tell them, make me choose. Put a gun to my head. I'm watching Evil Dead.
Well, I agree, and it's not so much that Chinatown is just such a straightforward, good movie, but Evil Dead has so many... It's the imagery, it's everything that goes with it, and being a good movie that I think make it better in every level, really. As good as Chinatown is, it's just Evil Dead's really impressive. Battle Royale, Gladiator.
Battle Royale.
God.
Fuck Gladiator.
And you didn't even love Battle Royale that much either. That's what's so good about it.
Just shows how much I hate Gladiator.
I like Gladiator okay, but I do like Battle Royale better. The Muppet Movie, 1979, A Bug's Life.
Muppet movie, I guess.
Yeah.
Bug's Life's okay.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes, 1973, Step Brothers.
Battle for the Planet of the Apes. I really hate Step Brothers.
Hot Shots Part 2, What Dreams May Come.
Hot Shots, but I have a really strong appreciation for what they're trying to do and what dreams may come.
I do too, but it's one of those overrated movies where people just loved it, and like these people I knew loved it too much, and I was like, well, it doesn't quite get where it's wanting to go. You just like that it's trying to go. I don't know. And Hot Shots successfully got where I wanted to go. Captain America: Civil War, Finding Nemo.
Finding Nemo.
God damn it! When are we going to disagree? Blindside, Deuce Bigelow, Male Gigolo.
Ah, no! Oh. Did you see that Michael Lord this week said he regrets ever being part of this?
No, I didn't. He did?
Yeah. Yeah, he was talking about it this week. Yeah, he was just they were talking to him about it. He's like he was talking about the whole they were talking about the whole white savior genre of things, and he's like, yeah, I really regret being part of that. I thought, and I so like, yeah, that movie is hard to watch now.
Especially when you I never really thought of it that way, but that's because I'm white and I don't have to think of it that way. But once you mention it, then it does stick out. Still better than Deuce Bigelow, though.
I mean, yeah.
Really, every movie, more than anything, is white savior. Unfortunately, even when they're not saving an African American person, they're still the hero.
Yeah.
Dennis the Menace, The Hunger Games.
Hunger Games.
Inception, Witness.
That's a good question. Inception.
I haven't seen either, so I'll just go with your vote. Well, all of a sudden I've just been trying to just think about white people versus African American, and so far it's been all white movies. Go It, the TV version.
Go. I hate the TV version of it. I think it's awful.
Lego Movie, Commando.
Lego Movie.
Uncle Buck's Scary Movie. Scary Movie 2, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, then I'll change my... I was going to pick Scary Movie, but... I don't really like either of them. Uncle Buck.
I'm going Uncle Buck. Kick-Ass, Goodfellas.
Goodfellas. I love Kick-Ass, though.
I do, too. Caddyshack, Flubber.
Caddyshack. Yeah, I don't know why I thought about that one.
Life of Brian, What About Bob?
Life of Brian.
American Wedding, Cold Mountain. All I'm seeing is white.
I do. Cold Mountain is a good movie, though, and I actually would prefer it.
That's fine. Capote, Alice in Wonderland, the Tim Burton version.
Capote, buy a lot.
Super Mario Brothers, Ocean's 12.
Ocean's 12.
This is a good one to go out on. The English Patient, 88 Minutes. The Al Pacino movie you've forgotten about. Probably never even knew about.
That is brutal. The one, like...
You got an overrated movie that's really just pretentious and dumb, and then you got Al Pacino trying to make a bad movie good. Which is what he did for 20 years.
The English Patient.